Okay, hi everyone and welcome. I see quite a few people trickling in. Um, my name is Marina Tkachenko and I'm the Marketing and Communications Manager at Myriad USA. And it is my pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar on maximizing impact on giving days. Before we begin, and as we're letting people trickle in, I'll just briefly introduce Myriad USA, but also mention a few housekeeping notes, and we'll jump into the discussion. This webinar is part of Myriad USA's series on sharing best practices in fundraising, designed to help nonprofit professionals worldwide enhance their fundraising practices. Myriad USA facilitates thoughtful, effective giving across borders. We provide donors with a simple and efficient platform to support nonprofit initiatives overseas. But we also partner with foreign nonprofits to support them and offer them cost-effective solutions to raise funds in the United States through a service called American Friends Fund. If you wish to learn more about our services, please don't hesitate to contact us at info@myriadusa.org. You'll also see that dropped in the chat. And during today's webinars, participants are in listen-only mode and the chat function is also closed. But we for sure welcome and encourage you to share any questions or comments you might have throughout the discussion through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screens. We'll have time to answer many of them live. Translation is also available through closed captioning. So if you click the Show Captions button in the Controls toolbar at the bottom of your screen, you'll be able to select your preferred language. And lastly, all of the materials, shared resources, and the recording will be made available after the session. And now I am super excited to introduce today's moderator of the discussion, Madiha Ahmed Watson. She will also take over and introduce the other speakers and begin the discussion. But Madiha is the Associate Vice President of Digital Integration at Faircom, New York, where she leads comprehensive omni-channel fundraising strategies for nonprofit clients. She is a results-driven digital strategist with over a decade of experience. Madiha excels at accelerating client growth through innovative fundraising campaigns and integrated fundraising approaches. Her expertise in identifying untapped opportunities, optimizing supporter journeys, and leveraging data analytics enable her clients to achieve their organizational goals through supporter-centric approaches. Madiha, I welcome you to get the discussion started. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Marina. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's session on maximizing impact on giving days. Thrilled to moderate this conversation, and I hope most of you are staying cool if you're aware the heat wave is. Thank you so much to everyone who submitted questions in advance. We'll be incorporating them throughout our discussion. But as Marina mentioned, please don't be shy about submitting more questions in the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And with that, today's conversation isn't just about raising more money on a single day. It's about building sustainable relationships with donors and creating momentum that extends far beyond any 24-hour period. So with that, we'll explore 3 critical areas: strategic planning, how to build campaigns that resonate with your mission and mobilize your community; smart execution, practical tactics that work regardless of your budget size or organization size; long-term cultivation, so converting one-time Giving Day donors into lifelong supporters. And whether this is your first Giving Day or you're looking to optimize existing campaigns, we hope to leave you with some actionable strategies you can implement immediately. And with that, I'm excited to introduce 2 experts who've seen Giving Days from very different but equally valuable perspectives. First, we have Victoria Leonhardt, Senior Manager for the US and Canada Hub at GivingTuesday. Victoria supports community campaign leaders across North America, helping them mobilize networks and drive local impact. She brings a decade of nonprofit experience and has seen what works and what doesn't across hundreds of Giving Tuesday campaigns. She's also a graduate of the American Express Leadership Academy.
I think we're losing Madiha. I'm not sure if she can hear us. Why don't I jump in the meantime? We might get her back. But yeah, I'll jump in. Sorry about that, Victoria.
No,
I'll
I can
finish your
finish.
bio. You can
Yeah,
go
she was
ahead.
just the
Go
part.
ahead.
Yeah, I'm a graduate of Northern Michigan University where I got my degree in marketing, and I also hold a certified nonprofit professional credential from Nonprofit Leadership Alliance. Thanks.
Thank you, Victoria. And next up we have Stephanie Zadora. Stephanie, if you would like to introduce yourself. Yeah.
Yawai Skano, Stephanie ni Giaso, Ona Loaga ni Agatayotni. Hello, my name is Stephanie Zadora. I'm a citizen of the Seneca Nation of the Wolf Clan, and I am the Deputy Director, recently promoted to the Deputy Director of Native Ways Federation. Our organization was founded by national Native-led nonprofits, and our mission is to activate and expand informed giving to Native nonprofits in Indian country through donor education and advocacy. I have supported our organization's infrastructure and strategy, programming for foundations, allies, and Native-led nonprofits, including our 2 Giving Days, Native Nonprofit Day in May and Give Native on Giving Tuesday. We also host the Native Nonprofit List and helped publish our On Our Terms report discussing a thriving Native nonprofit sector. I am also on the board for the Indigenous Lacrosse Alliance, and I coach at their annual youth lacrosse camp, which is a collaboration with the local tribe community center.
Thank you, Victoria and Stephanie. It's a big pleasure to have you here, and also to share your practical experience and see, the success, but also the challenges from your experiences. I think Madiha is back with us. I don't know. I see her icon. I'll give her a second. She might be coming back up, but why don't I jump into the discussion, and then once Madiha joins us back, she'll bring back her expertise. But I would like to get us started on sort of the part one of what you imagine is getting started on your giving campaigns, on your Giving Day campaigns, and the planning and the setup and planting the seed of kind of what's happening or what you plan to do. So I'll start with you, Stephanie. You had to build the Native Giving Day from ground up, as we got a snippet of, but what did that planning process look like? And most importantly, kind of what should somebody working in an organization or a fundraiser consider when thinking about launching its own Giving Day? And how can they, and I was really interested also in this topic as I was thinking about this, how can they effectively anchor the theme of their work, their focus, and their mission, to the Giving Day, and think about that so it really matters. And I just, go ahead.
Yeah, of course. So we are pretty unique in that we host a Giving Day. So we host an event for hundreds of organizations to participate in. We also rally foundations, donors, and allies to uplift and drive direct support to Native-led organizations. So the first thing, whether you're a host of a Giving Day or whether you're participating in a Giving Day, is identifying what is your goal. And making sure that it aligns with your mission and your values. So when we were creating these Native Giving Days, Native Nonprofit Day, we actually received a donation. So building relationships, we received a donation from Google for a .day domain when they were launching. And we decided on Native Nonprofit .day. So you can type in Native Nonprofit .day into your web browser, and you can reach our page where we host information about the day. And then we had to decide what were we going to do with that day. It was a little unique. We didn't start knowing we wanted to be a Giving Day, but I had some personal experience and professional experience, and so did our executive director with Give to the Max Day in Minnesota. So that was a starting point of this is a huge Giving Day in a specific state focused on all of their nonprofits. So we really look to their resources, to see what we could do. And we directly tie that to our mission to uplift and drive direct donations to Native organizations in the US. And really rooting in our values, focusing on fundraising that is solution oriented and highlights the great work of our organizations year round, avoid stereotyping, and really lives in our values. So as we started thinking about, well, what do we do for this Giving Day? We started really small. We started with a PDF toolkit. We used Word to just, maybe even Canva, to build out some tips and tricks, some downloadable graphics as well that organizations could share directly. But that was it. And the other, I mentioned relationship building earlier, but a key part of starting this Giving Day was using our networks. So we were very fortunate to be founded by some very large Native organizations. They sent us their contact list of Native nonprofits, and we reached out to those organizations. We said, hey, we've got this new thing going on. Here's the mission of this day, the goal of this day. Here's some data around the importance of this day. One piece that we always talk about is 0.4% of funding from foundations goes to Native serving causes, and less than almost half of that, 0.23, 0.25%, goes to Native-led specifically. And that's our mission. We want to support Native-led organizations. So having a toolkit with some really strong data points, a strong vision, mission, and messaging was just where we started. And from there, every year we've built on a little bit more, a little bit more. Our second Giving Day, when we were brought into the Giving Tuesday network, we ended up doing a webinar, a kickoff call, in just explaining what we're doing, what we're trying to do, and the resources that we have. And again, we were brought into the Giving Tuesday network pretty early on after Native Nonprofit Day in 2022. And we have really leaned on their resources and their networks. Everybody has been incredibly generous with what they've learned, the resources that they've created. They share all kinds of toolkits. We share our toolkits with them. And again, really leaning on those relationships that we have and that we're fortunate to be a part of, and networks that we're a part of. So I think those are my key kind of how we as a host started a Giving Day, but it's as a participant in a Giving Day, those are all the same lessons: relationship building, outreach, networks, a vision. That's the big piece.
No, I love that you emphasize that, because that can slip through the cracks, sort of sometimes overthinking, but it was really sometimes out there and simple. Start with just your network and see what Giving Tuesday has as a resource, what you can tap into your local groups. And I like that you mentioned sort of including the data in the toolkits, and maybe emphasizing that urgency, whatever your mission, whatever your cause is, but also just awareness, because that surely helps, like the data and having something to anchor your resources in. But I see Madiha, I think, is back with us. I was just going to transition us to Victoria and asking her about what are the core building blocks every Giving Tuesday leader should think about in the months ahead. So I'll doing that, and then I'm leaving now and handing it over back to you, Madiha. I'm glad that you're back with us.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties in this heat wave. So yes, Victoria, while Stephanie was kind of creating something new, you work with organizations plugging into the massive existing momentum that is Giving Tuesday. So from your vantage point, working with hundreds of campaigns, what are those core building blocks that you think every org should be thinking about in the months ahead, not just weeks?
Oh, definitely. Lots of things to think about. My first question when someone says they're getting excited to do Giving Tuesday is always why? Like, what is your goal? What is the purpose of participating in this large day of giving? And a lot of times people set a monetary goal. And if that's what you need right now, that's awesome. But there's so many other goals that you can set around Giving Tuesday. And I encourage organizations to really think about that. Is the number of new donors that you're bringing on board important? Is the types of people who aren't traditionally invited to give to your organization, is engaging them your goal? there are so many ways to look at how people give. Our data finds that when people are generous, they're generous in all ways, a majority of the time, right? So they give their time, they give money, and they give items. And if you're an organization that maybe needs diapers as part of a diaper drive, like that could be your Giving Tuesday campaign. I encourage people to really think about Giving Tuesday as a moment inside of their year-end planning. It doesn't have to stand alone. It can be part of your year-end giving campaign, or it can stand alone if you want it to be that one thing that you do in the lead up to the holiday season. But especially in the States, with like the cultural significance of the Tuesday that Giving Tuesday falls on, there is so much happening. People are out and about in community. And so using your Giving Tuesday campaign as an awareness building opportunity, as a way to get new volunteers, as a way to collect items, as a way to raise money are all things that you can do. Also, as a ways to give people the opportunity to use their voice, right? That's something people now are looking at. How can I use my voice to stand up for these organizations that are doing incredible things in our community and may need additional support? So developing an advocacy program or a peer-to-peer fundraiser where people are going out and speaking on behalf of your organization on Giving Tuesday could be another thing to think about. The second building block is always operating from a mindset of abundance when you're thinking about these giving days, right? They're a moment in time where people are actually looking to give, and we're inviting them to be part of it. If they have an affinity for our cause or the work that's being done by our organization, they need an invitation. Because they might just be standing there looking like, I really care about this thing, but I don't know how to get involved. And Giving Tuesday is a great opportunity to reach those people. There's so much talk about giving in the lead up and day of Giving Tuesday. Having a plan, third building block, having a plan to carry that momentum year round, right? You bring in all of these new people on Giving Tuesday. How are you going to keep them engaged throughout the year, through volunteerism, through advocacy, through donating? Definitely thinking through, yes, we're participating in this big moment when people are excited, but we don't want to let that excitement fizzle. So what does that follow-up look like? And I'll share an example later in the webinar of a nonprofit that is very small and did an awesome campaign this year. So those are kind of the three things I encourage people to think about. Why are you really doing this? What is your goal? Operate from that abundance mindset. And then how does this tie into everything else that you're doing throughout the year?
That's great.
Madiha.
Thank you. I love the example you gave of just thinking of items too. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be, and that's something we'll talk about when we think through DAF Day. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a tangible cash asset. It can be other things that you're requesting of your donors, and just thinking of different creative ways that you can engage with them. One follow-up question for you, Victoria. What do you find when you see organizations making and starting kind of this planning phase? Is there any mistake that stands out to you that they're not really thinking through, or something that you see that is pretty consistent across the board?
Yeah, it's the idea of setting a goal. The amount of organizations that don't set a goal and maybe might just think that I will post once on social media on Giving Tuesday and all of this money is going to flow in. My favorite is when people ask, how do I cut through the noise? And I ask them, well, what does that mean? Like, what noise do you want to cut through? What audience are you trying to engage? And a lot of times there's this thought that like, if we do this one post, it will go viral. And that's not the purpose of Giving Tuesday. The purpose of Giving Tuesday is a day to celebrate generosity, to celebrate giving, and to invite people to be a part of it. And so thinking through, what is your goal? How are you going to measure that goal? What does success look like? And really defining that as you build out your campaign so that you're testing your campaign against that. Is what we're doing matching our measure for success? So I don't think it's necessarily a mistake, but it's not engaging in that process of visioning what you would like your campaign to look like and why you're truly doing it.
That's great. Thank you. And to that point, I do want to add a perspective from DAF Day, which I know some had asked about in our registration questions. And one main question was, what is DAF Day? So just, going to the basics, because this is a very new emerging trend, and actually just DAF Day had just launched on October 10th last year. So it's very, very new and in its kind of infancy stages. But it was created by Chariot with participating nonprofits to raise awareness about donor advised funds. So you can think of DAFs as charitable giving wallets, and donors set aside funds through organizations like Fidelity Charitable. They get immediate tax benefits, and that can grow that balance. They can grow that balance through investments. So while funds can be withdrawn for charitable purposes, as a brand new Giving Day, it's still very heavy on education mode. So like when any organization does their first Giving Tuesday campaign, they're really focused on how they can educate donors about what their mission is and why a charitable gift can really make a difference, and why it's making a difference, and what impact it can have. But with over 230 billion sitting in DAFs nationwide, the potential is enormous once donors understand how to use this tool for causes they care about. And I know it's a way to think about how you can specifically target donors who give through these and what makes those campaigns unique. And that was really the structure, right? So organizations weren't just asking for donations, they were educating donors about how DAF gifts could be processed through year end. And to your point, Victoria, how are we going to keep these donors engaged throughout the year? And many campaigns included challenge grants that can double or triple the impact once you get a little bit more sophisticated with how you're thinking of the campaigns. So that required a lot of donor education, but it resulted in so much and significantly higher average gift sizes. So that's something to consider. And now that we've covered kind of that strategic foundation, we can talk about execution. I know many of you are working with smaller teams and tight budgets, so we want to be practical. And Victoria, I'll bounce to you first, and then Stephanie. What are some quick win strategies that you think smaller teams can implement without breaking the bank? So I'm sort of thinking in our audience members who might be wearing multiple hats, or they can't hire agencies or buy software. What would be some of those for you?
I'm going to share a little bit about a case study we did on a farm in rural Michigan. So they're in a community of about 6,000 people, very small. They have 90% of their food imported, and 80% of young people in their community qualify for free or reduced meals. So they're a community where food is really important. They're a nonprofit farm, and they had community gardens on a plot of land. They didn't own the plot of land. And in the summer, they heard from the owner of the land that he was looking to sell it. And he was willing to sell it to them for $5,000. So it was like perfect Giving Tuesday campaign. It's super tangible. The community can see it. They can rally around it. So this campaign specifically did three really awesome things that helped them reach their goal. First, they had very clear messaging. So they set up their goal of $5,000. But then they also had incremental, what happens if we raise 6,000, if we raise 7,000, if we raise 8,500, and if we raise 10,000. So the community could see they could buy the land. And then if they got all the way to 10,000, it was fully building out the gardens. They knew that they were going to do this for Giving Tuesday early in their season. So they were able to create content ahead of time. They weren't rushing to put together things in November when the farm wasn't fully blooming and harvesting wasn't happening, right? They were able to collect through the summer to put together specifically stories from the people utilizing their gardens. So they don't charge for their gardens. The community just comes and stewards them, and they're able to harvest the food. So they were able to share personal experiences from their garden members, from their staff, from their board, as to the importance of this, this really vibrant plot of land in their community. So they get to Giving Tuesday. They are starting to roll out. They actually started about a week and a half before Giving Tuesday, just kind of building that momentum, did some early giving opportunities because they wanted to get the word out. And that worked. They had a donor come through in morning of Giving Tuesday and said, we'll give you 5,000. Why don't you use it as a match? So day of, they're like, okay, we have a $5,000 match. We need to pivot our messaging a little bit to make sure that we now get to that 10,000. So they leveraged the 5,000 match. They got to just over 10,400. So they reached their goal. And they were able to to purchase the land. They're actually building the gardens right now. I've been following along on their social media, and they are, sharing that story of, here's the money we raised, here's where we're at in the progress. They're keeping their donors and community involved and engaged, and inviting them down to the farm stand and inviting them down to the gardens and showing off that progress. So I'll put this in the chat if people want to dive deeper into this case study. But I just really liked this one because it was a small team. It was a really attainable goal that was tangible and the community could see, and it makes a huge impact on the population, specifically the youth, having access to healthy food.
Yeah, that's a wonderful example. I would love to see that case study myself, but just hearing it was great. So thanks for sharing that, Victoria. Stephanie, one challenge I think that even Victoria touched on with newer Giving Days, or even established one for newer participants, is kind of creating this sense of urgency and excitement when your audience might not be familiar with the concept. How would you recommend building that momentum, especially in year one when you don't have some of those more like past success stories to reference?
Yeah, so I just will say, when you're thinking about as a participant joining a Giving Day, there are hundreds, thousands of opportunities in the US and across the world. And Giving Tuesday is definitely the way to find out who you could participate with, whether it's a locality like a neighborhood, town, city, or state, or something identity or issue based. So whatever topic you're working in, there's a good chance there's a Giving Day that you can participate in. So for us, we are a national organization. So we are trying to reach nonprofits and donors across 50 states in the US. And that makes our job really difficult because a lot of the tips and tricks around how to build momentum, how to get community to rally around you is by hosting events. And we can't do that when we're a national organization stretched across the entire country. So what we do is we have a really small team. We started out with 3 staff members who are working on this in addition to our other work. We just hired a Giving Days manager a couple weeks ago. But the big thing that we do on the day, besides creating resources like messaging, graphics, things that nonprofits can copy and paste. So if you join into one of these Giving Days, they may have those resources for you. Use those resources. That makes it really easy to keep your messaging really similar, to just stay on brand, and to get connected with donors who are ready to hear that message. The other thing we do is we host an activation. Again, as a national campaign, we can't host an in-person physical event. So we host a virtual social media storm where we ask our nonprofits and allies to post, to share, to comment, and like using the campaign hashtags. And that's always 1 p.m. Eastern on our Giving Days. So on Native Nonprofit Day and Giving Tuesday, we all get together, the hundreds of organizations that are participating, donors, whoever it is, and we are posting, liking, sharing. That's my favorite time of the year, is being able to see the results of our work, that people are using our messaging. They're literally just copying and pasting often. They may adjust it a little bit to fit their goals, but that is the easiest way to get involved, just using the resources that already exist. And again, as a national organization, someone that may be dispersed, for international organizations, that would be a really great tool, is finding ways to connect and come together at a specific moment.
Yeah, that's great. I love that you were using just how a small team can really maximize impact, and just, there's so many different avenues and we're all wearing so many hats, but being able to find the ways that you can just use storytelling to build this awareness and try to engage with people in as many ways as you can is really great. And building on both of your points, on DAF Day, well, again, it's still very much in its infancy. It just kind of became a thing last year. It was to raise visibility about donor advised funds, which is something that I don't think many people were aware of, and that challenge was kind of multifaceted. So I know through research, 83% of US adults didn't know what DAFs were, and 37% of those existing DAF accounts kind of go unused each year. So many donors who do have DAFs don't realize that smaller or local organizations can accept these gifts, and then they often default to giving DAF grants to major national nonprofits while using cash for more grassroots causes. But what we learned in year one was that organizations were largely just dipping a toe in because it didn't hurt to try, and it was, just another thing that you can maximize on. But this year, to your point, we're seeing much more proactive participation. So organizations are using branded materials, and like you said, they can kind of copy and paste, and whatever makes it more accessible to them and more digestible to donors is something that should be taken advantage of. And planning more months-long campaign and incorporating matching gifts, I think is really key. So just like any new Giving Day, it does require a lot of education, but also a lot of patience. And you're not going to see, that instant result in year one as much as you're going to see over year two and year three. And much more so than cash giving, you have to explicitly tell donors that you can accept DAF gifts because they're still seen more as non-traditional. I do want to pause. There are some really good questions that are coming up. One is, if I can get myself to scroll, can you share a specific successful fundraising on Giving Tuesday? Can be any country. And second question, how have those Giving Tuesday donations been extended to other countries? Victoria, would you be able to take that one first?
Yeah. So one of the things about Giving Tuesday is that Giving Tuesday, the entity, doesn't collect any money on Giving Tuesday. It's all done by the nonprofits all over the world. So specific to how the donations get to other countries is that is that individual organization's donate button that people are using, or a specific platform that they're listed on. Giving Tuesday does not collect any funds or redistribute them. We use what we call distributed leadership, where we provide a whole bunch of tools and no rules. I specifically work in the US and Canada hub, but we do have hubs in Latin America and the Caribbean, Europe, Africa, and India. And then we have a global team that covers countries outside of those regions. So happy to connect anyone that is outside of the US that wants to get connected with their local country leader or hub directly to them. I will put my email in the chat, and you can reach out to me and I can connect you with the person in your country. As some countries do use platforms, others do storytelling activities. There's a whole variety of ways that Giving Tuesday manifests globally.
Great, thank you. What also are some Giving Tuesday trends compared now with the last 5 years? Have donations been increased annually? Are there different strategic ways that things have been going? Can you give us some insight there?
Yeah. So we had a record year in 2024. It was 3.6 billion from 36.1 million donors. It has grown. We were flat from 22 to 23, and then we increased again in 2024. The trajectory has always been up. But most exciting to me is not only has that dollar amount gone up, we've seen gains in people who are giving their voice. We've seen gains in people who are giving their time, and we've seen gains in people who are giving items. So it's really exciting that it provides space not only for people to give money, but to give time, to give items, to give voice in a way that's meaningful to them. So excited to see how that growth continues and how people decide to give this Giving Tuesday, given all that's going on in the world.
Absolutely. Okay, last one. What's one tool, low or high tech, that you'd recommend? Stephanie, I can start with you, and then Victoria, if you wanted to jump in on anything else as well, feel free.
One tool that I would recommend, we use Canva. Now Canva in the US is free for nonprofits that are a certain size and certain staffing, but we, as I shared before, we create toolkits. That includes downloadable graphics. As we started the Giving Day, as we've grown the Giving Days, we've started using Canva to create customizable graphics. So we share the template link from Canva with all of the organizations who sign up, and they can actually customize the graphics so that it's their branding, their messaging. We include like what you can do to help, and people can fill in their own pieces of what their supporters can do to help. So that's definitely one really low tech tool. Like I shared, our very first resource was a PDF. It was just a Word document or some sort of design file that we just shared out. So those are very low tech ways to start. I also shared that we have grown the Giving Day every single year. So we did a webinar. So a webinar is a good way, a good tool. Everybody has Zoom. So being able to share that information, recording it, sharing it on YouTube with the registrants or attendees. And we did end up we do now have a giving platform as of Native Nonprofit Day this spring. So that's just how our Giving Day has grown from, very low input PDF to Canva customizable graphics, workshops, and up and up and up. So Canva is definitely, as a host especially, we can share that messaging out really easily with folks. I know DAF Day, I've used DAF Day, has a toolkit on Canva as well, customizable. So definitely well used by the Giving Day community.
Mine's going to be kind of a non-answer. And that's that you all know your community's best. And so you know the tool that will work, right? So I live in rural Michigan, and I can tell you that like Facebook groups are where everyone is at still in rural Michigan. You can get all the news about what's happening in the community in the Facebook groups. I know that is not the trend nationally, and I know not everyone should be setting up a Facebook group. But where I am, that's the tool. I encourage you to look at where people are finding information in your community or with Stephanie being national. Like I know that there's like native TikTok where a lot of native creators post to TikTok. So just finding that niche where your supporters may be hanging out and meeting them there instead of trying to build something new. That being said, I also really love Canva. And if you're not using Canva, like big fan. But yeah, I have a really cool campaign that I work with down in Texas where they use all of their local banks as drop-off points for donations because they realized people weren't comfortable going online to make donations, but they were still going to their local banks. So they use that as a touch point. I know others who the organization, or it wasn't even an organization, it was an individual. She just wanted people to have one spot where they could learn about all the nonprofits in their community. And so she built a website and it links directly to the donate page of each individual nonprofit. So Stephanie's campaign started that way. There are others out there that are that way. Stephanie grew to a really cool platform now, which is awesome. But if your capacity is just building a website with information about the nonprofits in your area or in your cause space, awesome. Like that is considered amazing in my eyes, right? So I'd say that the tool, high or low tech, is really meeting people in your community where you're at and filling the need of getting people invited into generosity. And in every community that looks different.
And I will add a even more low tech version of a website. If you're like, oh my gosh, build a website, a spreadsheet, a Word document that you can share the link to, a Google document. You don't have to do fancy things. You don't have to build your own website. Just create a link, a shared document. So there's a lot of ways. Yeah.
My first Giving Tuesday community campaign, Give 906, was just a Google Doc with all the nonprofits and their links. And we just sent it out to the local media and said, look at all the cool nonprofits. So yeah, absolutely. Low lift is awesome.
Exactly. Great points by you both. And I also am a very big fan of Canva. So if you're not taking advantage of that tool, and you'd be surprised how much donors like something that feels very just like you're sending it to them directly. So a Google Doc, a sheet, to your point, is just something that makes them feel more connected too. So it kind of serves both purposes. It's low lift on your side, and it makes them more engaged. So that brings us, I think, to what is also a very critical part of Giving Day strategy and what happens after that day ends, right? So because the real success of any Giving Day isn't measured in just dollars raised in one day, but in the relationships you're building for the future. So Stephanie, starting with you, and then Victoria, we'd love to hear from you on what follow-up strategies you build into your campaign from the very beginning, not as an afterthought, but is really part of your core strategy. What does that look like, and when do you start planning it?
Yeah, we're in a unique place as the host of 2 Giving Days because as soon as we wrap up one Giving Day, we're starting the next one. When I think about our, retention and momentum building, we are really building that throughout the year. And what that looks like is a lot of outreach to other organizations that we work with. So as the host, we are reaching out to other organizations that have networks of Native organizations to get the message out about how they can participate in our resources, whether it's the Native nonprofit list or getting ready for the next Giving Day. We also, as we, get through the Giving Day, we plan for follow-up. So we always plan a day after thank you message. We thank our networks for participating, and we encourage our nonprofits to thank their networks after the Giving Day ends. And we also send a survey to our nonprofits asking them for feedback on the resources that we used, that we provided for the year. And getting an understanding of how they're using the information and the resources, what is helpful, what's not helpful, what tips or kind of ideas that they might have to help us help them better, help us help the network better. And that really it does as soon as we get their feedback and then we start planning for the next Giving Day. So it really rolls through the rest of the year.
And I love this question because one thing I didn't mention when we were talking about goal setting is that stewardship and follow-up can actually be your Giving Tuesday goal. So I've seen campaigns that were thankathons where they weren't making direct solicitations. I've seen, we're coming up on the end of gala season right around Giving Tuesday time, right? And so I've seen nonprofits stop by and just visit all of the sponsors of their gala to thank them in person day of Giving Tuesday when people are thinking about giving. And it's like, oh yeah, we gave to that. This is so awesome to reconnect. So from if that's something that your organization is really working on, definitely that can be your goal for Giving Tuesday. If it's not, you want to make sure that it is included as follow-up. So when I did our regional campaign, we actually did what we called Thank You Wednesday graphics that had our region on it. We shared with all the nonprofits so they could pop their logo in, and we just kind of tried to flood social media with gratitude that day. Definitely calling larger donors, especially if they're first-time donors or DAF donors, right? What a great time to connect with DAF donors that you may have just learned of. And really being cognizant of that there's a lot going on Giving Tuesday, but that personal outreach can be so important and something that really makes you stand out. So if you have capacity to do that, even for a handful of donors, can be a really fun way to have a meaningful thank you following up. As for like the year round, you can kind of set up knowing that Giving Tuesday, people who give on Giving Tuesday give in multiple ways. You can set up a cadence of, oh, we have a volunteer event in April that we can invite our Giving Tuesday donors to. Oh, we know that every year we do an advocacy event or an awareness raising event in July, and we can invite them to that. We know that we have a special campaign in September for back to school. And you can kind of look at what your organization does year round and then plot out what would be touch points that you can engage your Giving Tuesday donors in, knowing that they are overall generous, not just generous in one way. And I think that, a lot of people are probably overall generous, and looking at your full stewardship strategy and seeing if there's ways to do additional touch points in categories that maybe they aren't traditionally asked in could also be a way to leverage Giving Tuesday and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, I think from the DAF Day perspective, what's interesting is DAF donors often give in different patterns. So they make, kind of like you were saying, these larger, less frequent gifts, but they're also more committed to the organizations they support. So they're looking for more of that engagement. And what we observed was organizations that had treated DAF donors more like mid-level prospects. They were giving them quarterly impact updates rather than monthly asks, and focusing more on outcomes rather than urgent needs. They were really successful, and they just felt like they were in this better rhythm with these donors than sending them kind of through this standard track that most active donors receive. So that's something to consider when you're in your planning stages as well. And with that, a couple follow-up questions. Stephanie, how do you maintain momentum for specifically Native causes year-round, not just during Giving Days?
Yeah, so that is a really good question, because we part of the reason we created Native Nonprofit Day in May was because there is a lot of activity that happens in November and around Thanksgiving in the United States for Native communities. There's a lot of I don't know, guilt or just people remember Native people when you think about Thanksgiving. So we wanted to create a giving day that was separate from that, because Native organizations are working year round. They aren't just working when you're thinking about us. We're not just working in November during American Indian Month in the United States. So that was being able to build that momentum throughout the year for our nonprofits to help them kickstart their donations in the spring and continue to build that throughout the rest of the year, often when it's early on in the fiscal year for organizations. So we building momentum is just a part built into the work that we do. So helping, I think the big thing is helping organizations to skill build and understand, like, here's resources that I could use year round in my fundraising. So we're not ever saying you can only use these during the month of May when we have Native Nonprofit Day. These are resources and messaging that people can use year round as they think about how they communicate with their networks, with their donors. And I think that's one of the ways that we get really excited, is to be able to see that messaging, to see that people are using the resources that we create, whether it's on the Giving Day or throughout the year.
Exactly. It's very good to see when they're engaging with everything that you're putting out there and that they're hearing you. Question for Victoria. How would you advise approaching storytelling during a Giving Day campaign as a nonprofit that does work that is not tangible? I know we kind of touched on this earlier in our conversations, but would love to hear more on that.
Yeah, I talk a lot about landing the helicopter in non-tangible campaigns. So I use where I live as an example because I think people can envision, or maybe not, what getting 24 inches of snow in 24 hours looks like. There's snow everywhere. You can't really see who needs help. Everything is just covered. If you're looking up from like a helicopter flying over, bringing in aid. If we land that helicopter, there's a shovel beside a car, and you see an elderly individual out on their deck, just looking like, what am I going to do? You know how to help. You can grab the shovel. You can help shovel out that car, and they can get on the road. And that's a way you can think about telling your story. If you have something a little less non-tangible, is what is it from the perspective of the volunteer? What is it from the perspective of the staff, especially if you don't want to really get into the stories of the people that you're serving? What is it from the perspective of, I saw a campaign where it was employers of unhoused individuals that are now in housing, and how those employers saw changes in the individuals that they were hiring once they had secure housing. It was a really great storytelling campaign. So there are a lot of people that your organization works with and touch in serving in these non-tangible ways that do have tangible impacts and outcomes. And it can be leveraging those people to help tell your story because they're seeing the direct impact of your work. And that way, you aren't exploiting the person who's receiving your services. You're able to kind of ethically story tell in a way that you can share what you're doing without saying or making someone the face of your cause area.
That's great. And in that same category, are there any examples of successful Giving Tuesday campaigns led by international nonprofits with limited media or social media presence or budgets, and how can they get started and introduce the organizations to the public?
There are so many. We actually have a whole bunch of international case studies on our website. I can plop that link in the chat. We also have a generosity toolkit where you can search by your country or your region in the world and see things, ideas that have come out of those areas. So we have a whole bunch of tools that highlight internationally how that has looked and how people can get started. And like I said, I put my email in the chat. We have over 100, I don't know what the exact number is right now, country leaders around the world who organize Giving Tuesday in their country. So if you're in one of those countries, happy to get you connected with your local contact who will know exactly what the international landscape in that area looks like.
Thanks, Victoria. I think that would be really helpful for everyone.
Absolutely.
One question that I've definitely seen floating around quite a bit, we touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to start with you, Stephanie. What's one mistake in Giving Days that you've seen or have made yourself that you would suggest others to avoid?
That's a great question. Especially as a small team, we have to be very careful about how we use our resources as a staff. So our time, we had no budget for when we started the Giving Days, besides staff time. I think it's try new things and see if they work. And if they don't work, then move on. We don't have to keep trying things that work for other people. Maybe we try them a little bit down the line, but investing a lot of time in something and then finding out that it didn't bring back like that return on investment, it's okay to learn that and to learn that that didn't work or the way that we did it didn't work. We had to really make some big decisions about different resources that we were creating that we needed to not focus on the next year, focusing on what is working. But putting our energy into things like outreach makes a big difference. So I would say be okay with letting things go, or trying them different in a different way. But especially as a small team, we are very conscious about what time we're spending on different activities and what impact it's making, how people are using that resource.
Yeah, that's a great example. I think a key thing that you talked about was just what works for one organization isn't necessarily going to work for another, and it's okay to try it out. And if it doesn't work for you, it shouldn't discourage you from trying some of the other tactics and some of the other strategies. It's just a matter of reading your audience base and seeing what they enjoy engaging with versus the things that they don't. One question for you, Victoria. Any suggestions for converting Giving Day donors into repeat supporters? I think this is definitely something everyone loves to hear about.
Yeah, I'll send our full report in partnership with Neon One over as a follow-up. But one of the biggest days to get recurring donors is Giving Tuesday. So having, if that is a goal of your organizations to get more sustainers and recurring gifts, a Giving Day is a great time to do it because you can ask your current donor pool to become recurring givers. That can be your goal. Is like, we have all these annual givers. We want them to become sustainers. That can be your campaign. I think it was like 16% of signups in the month of December happened on Giving Tuesday in 2023. I don't think we have 2024 data yet, but I'll double check. But yeah, it was a super high rate for year end that came through day of. And on our side, we found that those givers stick around. They do stay for the full year and beyond. So happy to share that report with everyone after the webinar, as well as our profile of a recurring giver, which can be helpful as you think through kind of parsing through your current donor pool if you'd like to upgrade them to recurring, to see who the most likely recurring givers could be based on our Giving Pulse report.
That's definitely a top trend that I think everyone will really appreciate. So thank you for that, Victoria. Thank you all for all of that rich discussion. We have kind of been fielding Q&A, but we're going to have several more questions coming in through the Q&A feature. And I know our events team has been monitoring registration questions as well. So I'm going to walk through a few of those. One of them for both Victoria and Stephanie, I think that we've again touched on, but is something I would love some elaborate detail on. How would you say you define success beyond dollars raised? What metrics tell you that your Giving Day strategy is actually working long term? And knowing that organizations, of course, have to define that themselves, what advice would you give on that? I'll start with you, Victoria, and then Stephanie, if you can also return.
Yeah, when I ran my Giving Day, I actually measured success by the number of nonprofits I built capacity in, because I worked for a capacity building center, and that was the true reason why we were doing it. And that's why I think finding your North Star and like the true reason why you're participating in Giving Tuesday is so important. Because for us, we were the only capacity building center in the region. There was kind of a lack of fundraising training. It was an opportunity for us to bring our nonprofits together to talk about collaboration, to talk about abundance mindset, to talk about collectivity instead of competition, and really kind of set the tone for how we as a region can elevate each other instead of it being really competitive. So that was how we measured success when I was at a Giving Day. I'm on the board of a small children's bereavement organization. And we measure success by how many peer-to-peer campaigns get started by our college-age volunteers. We don't really care how much money we raise. We just want to keep them involved and excited and sharing with their networks, because that helps us recruit more college-age volunteers. And we match our kids one-to-one with college-age volunteers, so we really need them. So for us, that's how we set that goal. So it's based on outreach, not necessarily dollars raised.
I think we also think of outreach as one measure of success, because it is that activity of outreach is really effective. Also, our communications, whether it's our newsletters that are going out from our communications manager, or the social media posts leading up to different events or engagements that we're hosting. And then we also do incorporate participation numbers. So how many people, who's using our resource downloads, how many nonprofits versus other audiences are using those resources. The participation in our kickoff calls. This year, we actually had the most registrants and the most live participants in our calls. So that was really exciting. It showed that our communications were working, that we had sent out enough reminders, enough emails, enough social media posts to get people to sign up and to show up. And then our list, so we host the Native Nonprofit list. This is now a year-round resource. So we encourage people to register before the Giving Days every year. So being able to see that number grow as well shows that nonprofits are hearing about the work that we're doing, and that they want to be a part of this. I think one of the pieces of feedback that we get from organizations is that they want to be part of something. And simply, not simply, but there's many ways that you can participate, and no way is better than another. And sometimes the only way that you might be able to participate is by signing up. And being able to grow that participation year over year it's a good place to start.
That is a beautiful sentiment. Thank you, Stephanie. I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. Thank you, everyone, for engaging so much. Let me hand it back to Marina and close out with some final thoughts. But thank you so much, Victoria and Stephanie, and for sharing your expertise. And thank you to everyone who joined today.
Thank you, Madiha. Well said. And thank you, Victoria and Stephanie, and everyone joining us today. We welcome you to take just a second to answer our survey about the webinar. I'm sure Victoria, Stephanie, and Madiha would like to hear from you and what resonated most, but as well as we welcome your ideas about our future programming and what might be helpful to you. We'll be back around September time with the next edition of the webinar, so we'll be in touch with that, but we'll also share this recording in our follow-up communication. If you have any remaining questions, please don't hesitate to contact us at info@myriadusa.org. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you at our future events. Have a good rest of your day or evening or morning, wherever you are. Thanks, everyone.